Hey everybody, it's Doom here, and we are going to paint up some of the January gnolls. We're going to do one in this episode. And this is like a barbarian gnoll dude with an axe, and he is pretty cool. He's got an eye patch, and spikes, and all kind of stuff. So let's get started. So the first step is to get a really thin, watered-down base coat on him. Let's make our life a little bit easier. Let's get some masking tape. What's nice about masking tape is it doesn't create an enormous amount of waste. You can rip it off and throw it away. And it just goes into a nice little ball or sticks to something that's already there and doesn't create a giant waste profile. So this is called Monster Brown. Sorry, it's evening, so my hands aren't going to behave as well. Yeah, it's a little chilly. And what I want to do is I want to get a little bit of water. A little bit of my brown, and I want to start base coating this and trying to define where flesh and where clothes are on a miniature like this is very difficult in this first step. So what I'm going to do is, using this very thin watered down paint, I'm going to just kind of coat everywhere I can get a hold of. A continuous use of water will be necessary to maintain this soy sauce texture of paint I'm using here. The natural receded areas where I have the black prime showing under this white dry brush will provide an enormous amount of the detail on this first coat. Let's switch to a larger brush. Switch to a larger brush and get this knocked out. There we go, much faster, which is, of course, a technical term used in some very, very technical painting circles. I am not part of any such circles, so I am probably not authorized to use it, but we'll see. Okay, need a little bit more water, a little bit more paint. All right, that's gonna have to make it last. I don't have to dig out more paint, because I already put my paint away. Now I'm not worrying about the blade itself. There shouldn't be much in the way of brown on the blade. Just make sure we coat everywhere there might be brown. Is going to get some of this really thin, watered down paint. You're like, oh, that looks like a hot mess. Yeah, correct. Now the damp brush, I'm just going to get in some of these places where my paint was a little thicker than I wanted. And there's not too many of those spots. There's just a couple where my paint wasn't quite thin enough. I'm just going to use this damp brush and scoop that up, move that around, and let some of that dark show through like that very thin coat. We're going to get a magic item here. +5 hot air gun burning. Boing, boing, boing. All right, sweet. So when you're doing projects like this that you plan on using washes on, you always have to start lighter than you plan on ending up with. And the reason for that is because the washes will darken it up some. So I'm just getting a little bit of that there. And I'm going to grab a really small... Oh, shit. Oh, hold on, threw my glue gun on the ground again. How many times a day can you throw your glue gun on the ground? Well, quite a bit. This brush is probably not all the way dry, but I think it'll be all right. Okay, now we're going to come and make sure we create an alternate tone. Lighten him up and creating some useful variation as part of our undertone. And I use these fancy words, but I don't know anything, so just assume that I'm talking out of my ass at all times. If you were here, you'd smell the smell of my ass talk. Nah, never mind. That doesn't sound just right. Okay, so a lot of detail to work with there, guys. A lot of things poking through. So for his fur and his flesh, we're going to utilize this masking tape. And what we're going to do is we're going to get this color called Fur Brown, which is just slightly darker and has a bit of a red to it. And we're just going to drag that around and get a real nice thin coat, even coat on a damp brush tip, just like that. And then any of the places where hair is sticking up, we're going to carefully take our time and make that a little bit darker than the original brown, the monster brown I put underneath. And you're probably thinking, man, these are really, really light and bright. Yeah, they are. They are. And we're going to darken those up, I promise. But what's important is that we don't make the miniature so dark that it looks subdued and grimy, and you lose all the detail. So if you look, his mohawk is not significantly darker. Now we're going to get all the hair on the sides of his face here, this like super mutton chop with braids in it. We're going to darken that up on both sides. We're being real careful not to get it in the mouth or on the flesh tones. Now, I don't know if he has any more fur per se on him, and I don't think he does. So we can leave that alone for now. Let's use that same color we used on his hair, and let's do whatever this clothing situation is down here in that same color. His kilt, or whatever. And we're not looking for ideal and perfect coverage here. If you miss a couple little spots, it'll be all right. With a highly detailed miniature like this, if you are a pro painter, you're going to get amazing results. If you're a lazy, crappy painter like me, well, you're going to have to play games and take risks to get results that'll be good looking for your table. Now this paint's pretty nice because it's giving me good coverage, but it's not overwhelming. I have expense reports that are due Monday, and I don't want to cut into the only weekend I've had off in forever where I have a whole true Saturday and Sunday off, but I'm going to have to cut into it to do my expense reports. And I don't want to be an adult. I just want to be a kid that paints miniatures and plays with my boys, and it sucks. So, with different amounts of coverage, different thicknesses of paint, I've gone around here and created some lines of variation. And it's important that we don't get it on any of that flesh, and we did not do that, which is important. And he's already starting to look a little bit interesting. Now, for his straps and belts and stuff, you could go through and make a ton of different colors to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this very dark oak brown. And I'm going to get my brush damp again, using my mouth, and make sure the tip is saturated and thin and pointed. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to hit some of these belts. And I tell you now, they don't have to be perfect, because we are going to be using a series of washes. And those washes are going to settle in certain areas and add different depths and different shadows. So don't panic if you're having trouble getting all the way out to the edges, or things aren't lining up the way you want. I will tell you, using different amounts of pressure as you're painting these, and using more and less paint in spots as you push it around, is going to produce different effects. Don't panic. These can be useful. Remember, perfection is not a prerequisite of a good craft or a good paint job in some cases. I'm going to get my brush damp. I'm going to use just water, because my paint, I want to thin it out a little bit more, and I don't want to be spitting on it that much. Okay. And once you've outlined some of these areas, essentially what I'm trying to hit right now are things that are probably leather, or might look like leather in a finished product. Let's see if we can touch that little eye patch. Darken that up. Now we want to do all the wood on the staff with this color too. If you get it on the little wraps that hold the staff together, the little tongs, that's okay. We'll come back and lighten those up with a dry brush or something later. It's a beautiful, beautiful day in the neighborhood. We had a neighbor move out that would let their children run wild in the streets, being loud way past any time someone that young should be outside, carrying on school nights at 10 o'clock, yelling outside. When my kids are trying to sleep because they have school and we put them to bed at 10 o'clock, these kids that are their age and younger are out there screaming like ninnies. We're starting to make some progress. Now for these arm guards, these wrist guards, these whatever those are, I'd like to use something that's probably like a little non-traditional. So let me find a gray color. This is called Necromancer Cloak. Let's get that. A small amount. And I want to mix that with a little bit of blue. I'm going to get this ultramarine blue. Crap. I'm going to grab a little bit of water. So first I'm going to thin out some ultramarine blue, and then I'm going to grab that gray, and I'm going to darken that blue up. making a really nice, even grayish blue. And then I'm going to come up here and carefully, not hitting anything besides these wrist guards, these bracers, or whatever they're supposed to be. And I'm not getting down in every crack, by the way, and I'm not doing these perfectly. I'm just not hitting stuff that I don't want to hit. And if I miss a little bit of them, I'm not panicking. I'm going to come up here and go around the hand carefully. And then I'm going to drag these out. And like I said, I can get this on the spikes because I'm going to come back and do something with those spikes later. But on things that I want to be done with, it makes the paint job longer if you have to come back and make corrections. And if your paint's just thin enough, there will be variation in the lighter and darker, or the deeper areas will be a little darker. Okay. Now, this shoulder pad is going to get a similar treatment. Leave a little bit of a dot of it so you can see that you're mixing it very similar in color. Then I'm just going to come behind this one and start outlining it. And I'm going to drag it outward from the arm, making sure that I don't get any of that paint on the flesh tone. Okay. Then I'm just going to follow that, trace around the outside, and then come back and fill in the inside and color it in. Now we can do the same color on the shin guards. Just being very careful, getting around the edges of it first. Now you could spend days painting something like this easily, taking your time and going layer and layer and piece by piece and feature by feature, every little detail on this miniature. And then you'd never have 5 of them on your table. It'd take you months to get 5 of these on the table. I just found something very interesting that I missed while I was cleaning this guy off. If you look in here very closely, see it right there? Look at that. Little printing support right there. I'm just going to reach in there with my tweezers and doink that out. Too easy. Alright, so this shin guard I was not finished with. All right. I'm going to rinse out my brush. I missed a strap on the front of him on the inside. I'm just going to dampen that brush up with my mouth. Grab that and rub that strap nice and dark brown. Okay, there are literally kids screaming out front. God darn it. Sometimes you think, oh, I hope that's not my children. And I also forgot that on the front of him, there is this like leather thing from his harness. Comes all the way around into a little V on his head. Now I'm going to have to do his eye patch in a different color for sure. So I'm going to mix a little bit of that with that gray and redo that eye patch. Then I'm going to get a little bit of that gray and a little bit of that brown. Use that on his nose. Okay. And I'm going to lighten all that up. and make a lighter grayish brown. I'm going to use that for these straps on the back of his little ankle guard things, his little shin guards. And then I'm going to come underneath this armor piece on his shoulder here, where that's not painted. And I'm going to add some of that in there. And then the strap going down across these bones. I'm just going to come up here a little bit better and grab some of this stuff on the handle of his staff. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. If that's going to be metal, I don't know. And if that's going to be like a skull right there, I don't know. Okay. Let's clean that brush up. Let's get a little bit of red. Now this red, we're just going to get the tiniest dab of it. And we're going to get a little bit of cleanish water. I say cleanish because, you know, it's not perfect. Let's drag a little bit of that out there. And get it on a brush. And let's just reach in between his teeth and drag it down his tongue. If you get a little bit on his teeth doing that, that's okay. We're going to come back and do those teeth in a second here. Let's skip straight to metallics. I don't want to use something that's super bright silver. So I have this gunmetal here. It's a darker, more subdued, dark gray silver. I'm just going to get a dibby dab of that. I'm redampening my brush. And let's make sure we're coating the metal areas with a very, very thin coat of that metallic. Okay. And then I'm pretty sure that these heads on the staff are like metallic decorations and not skulls. Okay, now we're going to wipe a lot of that off, and we're going to start looking for spikes. And we got a lot of spikes here. Before we do the spikes, we might... Let me think about this. I'm going to rinse my brush out. We're not going to do the spikes just yet. Let's take this and set it off to the side here and get it out of the way of the hot air gun. And let's hot air gun this before we start spikes. All right, let's get a soft makeup brush, something like this from the Dollar Tree, and let's get a little bit of that medium brown, that monster brown. And this is a really big dry brush for what I'm doing. Keep that in mind. This is super oversized. So we're playing a game right now. We're taking a chance. Let's come back around and touch some of these areas where we've done some of these different colors and just barely add a little bit of depth and barely pick up some of that detail that we might have lost while we're just base coating stuff different colors. Let's just take our time and see what we can find. If you look on his axe here, we'd already kind of done some work there, bringing detail back immediately upon touching it. We're doing the same thing. Now the different colors that are on him, with this little bit of a dry brush around him, pardon me, well, that's giving us some cool looking different variation. And now it looks a lot much less like we have just used, you know, 4 basic browns and a metallic and gray. It makes it look like we've done a lot more work at that point. Look at that. So I'm going to set that dry brush off to the side. And now let's start doing some of that metal work. So on our metal work, we're looking for spikes. And if it's a spike that has like 4 sides like this one, I'm making sure I hit the top point with more enthusiasm, and then just brushing around on the rest of the spike. On some of these larger spikes that are protruding out more, I'm hitting them from 2 angles to make sure I get the entire spike covered with the metallic. We come up here on the shoulder, those are bones, so we don't want to touch those. Let's just drag our silver along these spikes on this gauntlet. And I don't really want to paint these, okay? I don't want them to look like brand new spikes that have just been placed there. Now on his fingers here, there is a knuckle duster, because he's got a spiked knuckle duster and an axe. And I do want to paint that knuckle duster silver. And then I want to come back and make sure I catch all these spots that are supposed to be silver again. Make sure they're noticeable. Now on his chest, I'm going to be super careful. Catch some spikes. There we go. All right, I'm pretty happy. Now we got some nails and some bones to do. Now, since we're not going to dry brush these spikes down individually and these bones down, or these nails and these bones down individually, what we're going to do, since we're going to be using a wash for now, is we're going to get this white here. We're going to get it really thin. We're going to drag it on those bones. Lighten those up. Minimum enthusiasm on this. And just make sure you're catching this from a couple different angles. And just like that. Makes a big difference. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to make it real thin, and we're going to come across, and we're going to grab these claws on his feet, these toenails. And I could have done these in a gray or a black, but I've opted to not. And then he's got a couple fingernails shown, and we're just going to lightly drag that along to catch those 3D erased fingernails and leave that alone. Now that same color, we're going to grab a little bit of this tan that we had left over, that khaki-ish color, that I think it was called skeleton bone. We're going to mix those two. And we're going to drag a lot of that off onto our cardboard and make it kind of like a half-ass dry brush. And then we're going to just lightly drag it along some of these straps and wraps on some of this gear. And we're not painting them, we're just kind of dragging it along and catching edges in some of the definition and design. Okay? And we're not doing this for any reason other than to give us more effect when we use our wash. We're going to rely on our wash to do the heavy lifting on this part, to catch the detail and really do a good job. Okay. Now, we're going to hit those teeth with that same off-white combo. Make them noticeable. You don't want to push so hard that it goes back onto that red that we did for the tongue. You don't want to take away from that, so just take your time and grab those teeth. Now we're going to wash that brush out. We're going to use that off-white and do his eye that is not covered in a patch. And then we're going to go do something with his other eye too. So I got this wet with my tongue. I'm just going to grab some of that white. Not too much on my brush. There we go. Hit that eye very lightly. Then I'm going to get this black. I better shake that up. Okay. And I'm going to leave it with a little dot so I can kind of drag it around and fill that in. And we're going to hit that eye patch. Just like that. Alright. I'm washing my brush out with my mouth. We're going to come back and work on his base. We're not going to use miniature paints on the base. We're going to use my Walmart paint. This is called Burnt Umber. It's a dark paint. I use this on a lot of bases. It's a very generic go-to color for me. If you're new here, thanks for coming and joining us. If you've been around, you know what's coming next. We're just going to paint this base up. We're going to try like hell not to paint on any of the miniature. Now, if you get the very tips of those nails, I don't think anybody's going to notice that, but if you roll that brush hair right up onto that, people are going to see it. So let us make an effort here to take our time and try not to paint anything on the miniature that we've already finished. I say finished, I mean finished to this point. Now, I think that if you take your time like we're doing here, I say take your time, you could paint this much faster or much slower. But let's be honest, I'm a lazy painter and I like to get stuff tabletop ready pretty quick. Because I'd love to be able to throw 7 or 8 gnolls down on my table and scare the hell out of my party instead of having one really nice painted gnoll that they kill in a couple turns. Personal choice, personal choice. Okay. And while that's still damp, it looks like we got everything pretty much. Let's get a lighter brown. And just dab around on there and create some variation. For my lighter brown, I'm using melted chocolate. And this is one of my go-to base colors too. And I'm just going to kind of smear that about over top of that burnt umber. And I'm going to grab some of the thicker spots that might not dry quickly too. And get rid of those. Then I'm going to grab any of this other brown I have around that's light. I'm going to wipe a lot of that off. And then I'm just going to come back and touch some of those areas briefly. Why? Well, why not? Okay. Let's get a little piece of fabric. I got some paint here that I don't want. Of course, look at this. Come on, seriously. Don't you worry your ugly little heads. We'll take care of it. I know a guy. I'm going to wipe my brushes off since they're pretty much rinsed out. I'm going to put them away. We're not going to need those brushes again for this. Plus 500 going to burning. I know you guys love magic items. A little bit of black paint. I was wrong about being done with this one brush. I need it real quick. I'm going to come around here where the 3D dirt that I made with super glue is. I'm going to get these flat, non-textured areas and paint them black. Something I do on all these kind of DungeonSwag bases like this. You're thinking, Doom, he looks a little plain yet. Yeah, I know. We're going to deal with it. Don't you worry, ugly little head, I promise. This next step's going to blow nobody's mind. Nobody's mind's going to be blown. If you've seen the channel before, you've seen what I'm about to do. If you're new, you'll probably see what I'm about to do. I did not invent any new painting techniques, unless you want to call my all-in-all approach a new thing called lazy painting. If you want to do that, you may, but I wouldn't say I invented anything. I've just perfected a technique of being very lazy and populating my tabletop with beautiful miniatures that I put very little effort into. And the biggest secret about having beautiful miniatures is the miniature has to be a good miniature to start with. Not that my paint job did anything to contribute to that beauty. All right, let's do it. We're going to dry this guy off while I start hunting for a very soft brush. That should be dry. I hope it's dry. Now, I'm going to use something called a soft tone on this guy. This is made, it's a quick shade by Army Painter, and this is surprisingly a pretty good looking product. We're just going to get a little bit of, oh shit, flying masking tape. A little bit of masking tape, and it doesn't matter what color you're using for this. You don't need much. This is because it will soak into your cardboard. So unless you have a really painted up piece of cardboard that like is going to stop the paint from soaking through, like I had earlier today, that's laying over across the room now, you just need a couple drops like that. You might need to come back for more later. We'll see. So now we're going to get in here with that soft tone. We're going to hit this whole mini and get it all in the cracks. And this is going to fill in all the deepest spots. Now, when you're doing this, keep in mind you have about a minute or so after you first hit it that's going to reactivate your dry paints and start dragging those around. So don't come back where you've already done and try to do anything spectacular or fancy. You will regret it. It will not look good. Got about a minute for this step, okay? I did not get enough, and that's going to be my fault. Okay, get in there. Make sure you're getting the ears, that knuckle duster, and the fronts of the feet. Now he's definitely got more detail than he had before. Everything's kind of showing and drying. I'm going to come in here and try not to mess him up and hit that again. And then I'm going to get a piece of fabric. I'm going to wrap a piece of it around my finger, try to find a clean spot, and I'm going to dab some spots that I have too much of that on. Look how flexible it is. That's a sturdy mini, man, for being a 3D print. That's something I'm so proud of Beserker for. He's the one who found the final recipe for our minis. Look at that. How many 3D prints do you know that can do that? Beserker is an amazing partner for an endeavor such as DungeonSwag, I'll tell you that much. Speaking of DungeonSwag, this is one of the DungeonSwag minis from the January box. So if you're wanting something like this, it's February, you missed it. Sorry I didn't get it painted till now so you can see them. But I do work full time. Okay, I've dabbed off what I want to dab off, and we have a really good looking beautiful miniature here that we can throw on our tabletop. It took us about, I don't know, 40 minutes or so to get it done. We do need to put some flock on the base, and in order to do that, these the soft tones don't dry super fast for me. They take a couple hours to really dry in front of a fan. So we're going to cheat. sort of dry, just enough that flock won't stick to the miniature too much. And I'm just going to get a tiny dab of clear glue here. And a piece of cardstock that I have laying here that has glue on it, dry. And I'm going to get a little bit of glue, and I'm going to push it down into the recesses in that dirt area and spread it around in an interesting shape. And I'm just going to put a little bit of spots for grass on this base. And then that bright green from the flock I'm going to use here, which is a very vibrant, dark, moss-looking color, is going to create an interesting kind of something like that. All right. So this guy's going to get a clear coat in an hour. He's going to sit in front of the fan, and then he's going to go join my collection. This is one of my faster ones, and I'm not unhappy with him a bit. He's good. He's good enough for the tabletop. He definitely looks like a gnoll. He looks like a gnoll with a two-handed axe. He looks like trouble. I would like to come back and do something with that axe blade maybe later, but I'm not sure yet. But for now, I'm happy. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you spending time with me. If you like the miniatures, go to the website, www.DungeonSwag.com. And if you look in the description of this video and many of the other videos, you'll find a link for a discount code to get our box sent to your house monthly. Right now, your first box could be 40% off using the code VAL40, and that'll be good till Valentine's Day. Yeah, go figure, right? Do the stuff the YouTube gods need you to do. The algorithm gods, you know what they want. They want you to like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell icon, and leave a comment. And check us out on Discord, where we occasionally play RPGs, not so much anymore. I was trying to get it going, but it didn't really take off, and I've been busy. But I am going to try again soon here once work slows down a little bit. And then we play video games on there. Been playing some Quinfall lately. That's pretty fun. And you're welcome to join us. Until then, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.